Hi. Welcome back to High Strangeness on this last week of July. It's really nice seeing you guys tonight. Let's see who we got in the chat. We got Doug. Doug, nice to see you back. Good evening, Ashley and everyone. Good evening to you too, Doug. And Orion, good evening. Did you see the latest episode of Y-Files? I keep meaning to get into it. I have not gotten into it yet. I'm so behind on Blurry Creatures that I'm kind of like, do I do that? Do I hop into something new? Orion, Y-Files. Is this Craig? I got to DM you. We got to talk about Y-Files. Brian, by the way, Brian, thank you so much. It happened right as I was closing out the live. Thank you so much for that tip you sent my way. I really appreciate that. We got to talk grounding. Brian, by the way, recommended grounding sheets to me and my family, and we're having some really interesting results. So maybe you got to come back on the show. We'll talk more about that. We got Hex Glenn. Hi, all. Hi, Glenn. Hi, Tomas. Hey, B Ken. Hey, guys. BKen369. Are you new? I don't recognize you in the live chat. Have you been lurking? Never heard of the Y-Files, but looks good. Just subbed it. You know what? I keep hearing about it over and over, and I cannot wait to check it out. Like I said, I'm just behind a Blurry Creature, so I'm like, I gotta one thing at a time my brain can focus on. Okay, so it has been a while. That's why I'm kind of thrown off, because I haven't seen you in a while. It takes me some time to get my brain recognizing usernames on here. Mojo Shop, one love for all. Thank you for being in here tonight, Mojo Shop. And thank you guys for coming back and for being with us tonight. So we have a special guest on tonight's show. We have Peter Feliciano of Conservatish. I was on his show back, I believe, in March, and we had a really good time. And I'm like, let's come and talk some weirdness. I'm sure we have a lot of weird things to talk about. And especially after this week of quote unquote disclosure, right? Yeah. Okay. I mean, let me tell you, if people weren't believing in aliens before and now all of a sudden they're believing in aliens, I'm sorry. But if the government comes out and says there's aliens, then maybe that's a good reason not to believe in it anymore. But you know what? Let's see what Peter thinks about this. Peter, thank you so much for being here tonight. I can't wait to talk some weirdness with you.
Yes, me too. Hi, everybody. My name is Peter Feliciano. Good to see you all. Hello.
We had an awesome interview that just came out a few days ago with Forest Mommy. So I would definitely go sub to Conservatish right now.
You're the reason why she and I got introduced.
You know, when
I'm going to stick with introduced. I like it.
Introduced. I like that. We should introduce that into the YouTube lingo. But you know, like when you see Forest Mommy's tweets and knowing Peter, I'm like, you know what? This would be an amazing pairing. You guys seem like I was about to say sisters from another miss. I don't know.
How dare you, ma'am?
Whatever.
You're misgendering me.
Racist.
You can go to jail. You can go to jail. That's a felony in Michigan right now.
Go send me to the white women jail with all the Karens, and we're all going to just constantly call the correction officers on each other over and over.
It might not be the white jail though, because I see those hoop earrings. That's that's pretty Latina.
You know what? Not in New York. We all dress like this in New York.
Oh, is that right? I've been gone for a year, so that means I don't know. No. Okay, now I get
it. You know what? Yeah, you lost all your New York points because you abandoned us for Texas. But that's
awesome.
Another story.
I'm so happy.
You don't miss us, but you know what? You are here. You are a one of us by birth, so you cannot erase that from yourself. Oh, shoot, what was I going to say? Oh, you know what? It's funny, not to be off on a tangent, but when I had gotten the last time I had headshots done, I had these headshots that came out pretty cool, and I had on a leather jacket and this and that. And the person who was kind of evaluating them out in LA is like, okay, this is good, but, you know, it portrays too much of the tough girl thing. And I'm like, not New York. This is just, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's interesting how certain things mean things on different coasts. I'm like, no, here, this is just a part of your outfit. It doesn't mean, you know, just suburban white Ashley is walking around in this, not fighting anyone in my leather jacket. But anyway, that's a different tangent for a different time. We should get together and talk about culture too. But I guess I'm sorry. Before I guess what I wanted to continue saying was, don't let the name fool you, Conservatish. I don't care what side of the political spectrum you are on. Go check them out. You will find Peter's stuff very interesting.
You think? I feel like I've had too many conservatives last year. You know what I mean? I haven't had any. I mean, it's been maybe 2 years since I've had a socialist on. had a lot of activists. So it's rare that I have comedians on anymore. I don't know.
What do you, I mean, have they kind of blacklisted you and they're like, no, this guy is too leaning too much one way now? Like, what's
I think yes, but I think I've kind of blacklisted them. Meaning like I only like what I like. Like if I'm interested in somebody coming on, then I'm
yeah,
interested in them coming on.
yeah.
Um, and I don't, I mean, part of the leaving New York was doing what I want to do and not being around people who like regulation and not being told what to do. And so that, the show's a continuation of that. I just like look at the spectrum of who I've had on and I'm like, maybe though, you know what though? Actually, I'll correct this. This last month, I've had a lot of labels, I think, are part of the problem, but I've had a lot of libertarians on. So maybe,
Mm.
maybe it's squishing along. I think we as a human race, or at least in America, are squishing along away from labels so ardently, you know.
It's interesting, and especially when you see, like, I mean, because I think that's just our nature as humans to divide into factions and to want to label each other. And I think
Right.
that's also where we kind of get off into special snowflake syndrome. Everyone wants a special label. Um, but but you do see now more kind of crossing the lines, like force mommy, for example. Like,
Mm.
okay, I know libertarian used to be this big scary label once upon a time, but isn't she like supported now by Republicans, are now reaching across the lines and being like, you know what, she's good people, which is pretty interesting. So I think, I mean, but maybe that's just kind of the circumstances of the last few years are making people kind of look outside the box and realize that everything is faked. Everything is like, what is it, two horns on the same goat. It's all BS.
Government's right. Government's the problem.
Mhm.
I would even vote for a Democrat if they were proving that they were all about shrinking government. The problem is that no Democrats would do that.
Mm-mm.
Not in this climate, not these days.
I mean, the Republicans don't even want to.
Exactly.
Yeah,
In fact, I mean,
good.
so frequently, they think like the left actually believes that Mitch McConnell is our guy. Like we on the right, we hate that dude. We hate that dude. God bless him. I hope he's healthy. Blah blah
Yeah,
blah. I don't know what lizards need to do for health, but
yeah,
whatever you need to do. Um, but nobody reps that dude. Nobody, no, even my super Christian followers and the people that I follow who are full on actually conservatives, they don't like that dude. Nobody likes that dude
yeah.
except for the people in Congress who can profit off of his behavior. So yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know.
No, I mean, it's true. I mean, honestly, I don't even think there's anybody now in government where we can look at and be like, that's our guy, that's our woman. Like, they're just, they, I don't know, they get in even if you think they are initially, and then they just all of a sudden, I guess they love the taste of power and they just
Mhm.
completely lose touch. And I think that's also one of the things that I really like about Forest Mommy, because that's what, like, kind of what some of the things she said, that's what I've been believing now the past few years. Like, I don't believe in national elections, any of that. That's all
Yep,
BS. That's all fake.
yep,
But I
yep,
believe local is where it's at. So the
yep.
only reason I go out and vote is because of the local stuff. Everything else is just garbage. I should just write my name into the presidential election if it wasn't going to red flag me for something.
Right.
Um, but
In a few months or in a few weeks, I have another candidate on named Derek Brose. He's running for Houston mayor.
oh,
And Derek Brose is a guy who's done, he's been super into permaculture for years. He's been an activist and a journalist. He helped with the Occupy organization and stuff back in 2010, 2011. And now he's running for mayor. And his whole goal of running for mayor of Houston is to shrink the power of the mayor, is get in there and go, okay, we're going to give this back to the city council, give this back to the city council, give this back to the city council,
which
because
is
it's
nice. Wow.
insane.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
that's
insane
pretty
that,
fantastic.
yeah. In fact, right now in Houston, there's actually an ordinance or a law or whatever the hell that allows for the mayor to override the power of the city council in crazy ways. So, like as an example, if the city council, say you as Ashley
Mhm.
in Houston, you go up to the city council members and you say your piece and you tell them, "Hey, we really need some help about this, pothole or whatever." If the mayor doesn't bring it, whatever topic it is, to the city council doesn't rule on it.
Hmm. Okay. So I mean, at that point, what is the point of even having the city
What is
council? Yeah. It's
exactly
ruling
right?
by executive order at that point.
Right. So
Which
he's running to help fix that.
Okay, that is cool. I mean, especially because I make jokes, and I'm sorry to my Texas friends, but I'm like, Houston is like the Florida of Texas. I feel like whenever you see
Mhm.
some crazy Texas story, it's always coming out of Houston. If you see a
Mhm.
crazy video on Twitter, it's always out of Houston.
Mhm.
So I mean, that city needs some major help. So I
Mhm.
mean, I hope this guy is able to make some waves, some traction, get some traction.
Mhm.
And speaking of candidates that are doing something a little different, Clintrons was wondering your thoughts on RFK Jr.
It's complicated.
Mhm.
I think, you and I have been talking about it. We've all been talking about it, and you mentioned a second ago. Um, what I think the main lesson we're learning as a human race, Bill Hicks said it brilliantly, was our next evolution is not another opposable thumb. And I know, it's, even if you don't believe in evolution, just follow me here, everybody. Our next evolution is not another opposable thumb. It's the releasing of the institutions and the ideas that no longer serve us, is big giant centralized bank serving us, is a big giant centralized government serving us, is apparently the move towards a new world government serving us, do you feel, everybody, that your needs are being heard? No, right? So we're going to start to let go. Again, that goes to the smaller government thing. RFK, just like Trump, just like DeSantis, just like anybody, people start to put hero status on candidates. The biggest lesson I've learned over the last 3 to 5 years is no more heroes. No more heroes. No more leaders. That
Mhm.
doesn't mean that I wouldn't vote. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't try to press my representative to do what I wanted. But, and I'll get to my point in a second. But what I'm saying is, you're if you're in government, you're my employee. Period. 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 It is not the other way around. You're not a leader. You're not a ruler. You're none of that. You are my employee, and you can be fired or face consequences just like any other employee. And the reason why I mention that is because RFK does have, just like these other candidates, does have hero status. He does get this sheen of like, oh, he's going to save us. Nope, 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 nope. No one is coming to save you, everybody. But that's not bad news. That's good news. If we put the power, this big rock, this, energy, this light, and we just put it back in our laps, what could we do? That might be the solution. Instead of someone else will do it, the hero, the blah blah blah. That takes the onus off of my behavior and my awareness. And I'm. So, being that I don't see him as a hero or a savior or whatever, I would say that, out of all the candidates, he is one of them up there that I think at least is authentic, as best as a politician can be. At the same time, if he was in power, again with the words that we use, if he was in office, yeah, with the power, if he was in office, would he be tempted to start to use that in order to force us all to get along in the certain way that he believes is the best way for us to do that? Probably. Would there be a chance that he would grow government? Possibly. At the same time, the dude is calling out the CIA. Like, that's pretty legit. That's
Yeah.
pretty legit, right? No one's done that before. Maybe Trump has done that in other ways. But this I really want to cuss. But this dude, calls out the CIA, calls out Fauci, calls out all these people, and I'm like, that's pretty legit. At the same time, I will also say, um, he's a little gray area when it comes to guns. And
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
super into guns. I'm super into, right. He has said in the past, recently, on I think it was, I don't know if it was the Rogan one. I only listened to the Jordan Peterson episode, but he has said also, I was at Portfest in New Hampshire last month, and he said essentially he believes that there's a problem with mass shootings on the rise, which, yeah, but when a dude goes into a club in St. Louis and shoots, he's technically only trying to shoot a couple people, but he ends up shooting 13 bystanders. Is that also a mass shooting? Did we already count that, or we don't care because it's the Black community? Hello. Anyway, he said that there's a problem with mass shootings, and he doesn't think gun confiscation or registration will fix that. And I 100% agree with that. He talks to his own experience, to the idea that when he was growing up, everybody had guns, but there weren't mass shootings. Now we have more guns, or around about the same, and yet we have a ton of mass shootings. So what is the fulcrum between it happening and it not happening? It's not the firearms. And that's essentially what he said. Did he say outright that he wouldn't? I don't know. I don't remember him saying that. So I don't want to be just a single issue voter. I do have the idea of what I think is most important: bodily autonomy. And as an extension of bodily autonomy, which he's good on, the right to defend myself is bodily autonomy. So I'm a little gray area on him. And, again, I don't care who it is. If you're going to shrink government, I'll vote for you, and then I'll hold you accountable. And then if you're not, you're the enemy. So I won't.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, and when you talk about the statistics changing with mass shootings and gun ownership pretty much being the same, I mean, that also speaks to a whole mental health crisis going on. I totally believe that everybody's completely lost their minds. So and I do believe that is tied to you know what? I'm about to go somewhere. It's going to get me in trouble, so I'm going to stop right there.
No, you're safe. You're on a safe place. You're with me. It's all good.
But I was also, I'm kind of losing the train of thought at the same time. But also, yeah. So we have you know what? I'll save this for another thing. I need to think this out a little further before but I think you know where I'm going with this. But also, yeah, Ada makes a great point here. Yeah, there's so many things about him that are on the mark, but he's a big climate nut. And then when you start getting into climate stuff, that's also where the bodily autonomy stuff kind of comes into play. And your autonomy as a human being. Oh, I'm sorry, you can't have a gas car anymore. When people have those very strong feelings about climate and how to go forward with it, and then that's when the control thing, oh well, I can change the world because I do have this power. You know what, let me start writing some executive orders, let's start changing some things here and there. And so even if he's a great guy, there are certain things that where the things that he's off the mark with, I think, are going to spiral him into just a complete authoritarian position. But I'm with you what you said earlier. I don't care what side the person is on. If they're for, small government, shrinking things, if they're on the mark, then it doesn't matter. But so
can I be a little bit controversial?
Yes, of course.
Thank you, because I am Peter Feliciano. So here we go. Yeah. This is why, regardless of what side of the abortion topic you are on, the ending of Roe v. Wade is kind of a good thing in this way. The Upper West Side of Manhattan should not be in charge of what the people of Texas want when it comes to that law, right? Yes. And the people in Texas should not be in charge of what happens in the Upper West Side. Because if the people who are in Texas were in charge, i.e., big democracy, right? If the people in Texas were in charge of what happens in New York, they'd be losing their minds. But if we separate and focus on smaller government and say, you know what, each state does what they want, okay. Now, do I think there's other avenues to that argument and whatever? Absolutely. It's a very complicated thing. But I essentially am saying it doesn't really even matter who gets in office, because the problem is that the government is too big. The government is too big, and you cannot wrench power away from them once they already have it. No government in the world has gone, you know what? We took these executive orders. Here you guys go. Oh, you know what? We needed the Patriot Act because the terrorists, right? But you know what? Now that we're done with it, here you go. They don't do that. They do not do that. In fact, the executive emergency order only ended like a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, whatever.
Something, yeah.
Yeah, because Biden's
excuse to bring it back.
They'll bring any excuse to bring it back, right? And not just they were talking about COVID recently, but also this and that and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Crises of various kinds and shapes are a blank check for people who are malevolent. and inept and greedy. So if we made government smaller, it wouldn't matter who is in charge if we made government smaller.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, the interesting thing about, that whole Roe v. Wade thing, their beloved person, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, even she was like, "Sorry, this is unconstitutional. It doesn't work. You can't make a law of the land." When every state has should have the ability. No, they have the right to decide their own laws. She's like, "This doesn't work. It's unconstitutional." They nobody wants to dig that far into it. This woman that they praise, they make Christmas ornaments out of, and this and that. They want to forget that she was trying to explain why it didn't work. And no, I think that's a beautiful thing about the way our country was designed, because it is massive. It is like the size of Europe. So you do need the parts like governing themselves, because each state is like its own country. I mean, if you want to drive from New York City to Niagara Falls, it's like an 8-hour drive. I mean, in Europe, you can drive 8 hours and go through a couple of countries. So really, we do need that to govern that way. Okay, yes, with open borders between the states, because we don't want to now become what Australia was during the lockdowns during COVID. But that's one of the amazing things about states' rights. But anytime you bring it up, there are people of a certain political affiliation who act like that's the devil. Oh no, absolutely not. We have to be cohesive. I'm like, no, that doesn't work. You know what? I kind of wish we did have like an electoral college within the states too, because how is New York City making legal decisions, or not, sorry, legislative decisions for upstate New York, for like, what is St. Lawrence County, like the least populated county in New York State? So whatever New York City votes for, they're deciding the fate of St. Lawrence County. Like, that doesn't make sense, but that's another issue. But speaking
I mean,
to
guns are a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
That somebody who lives in a very rural area part of New York has to have the same gun laws that someone. I mean, they don't. There are some changes, whatever, but it's pretty intense in New York. In New York, I remember when I was living there, it was like I had to keep. If I wanted to have a gun, I could have one gun, but it had to be small. It had to be in a locked box with the ammo separate in a locked box for me to go to the gun range, which I would have to drive, 8 hours north just to get to a effing gun range. But then, the struggle, it's insane that somewhere that has bears would have to have the same defense laws that, you can, in a place that you can order Thai food at 3:30 in the morning.
No, that is true. Actually, that's where I learned. I learned in the city, underground, West Side Pistol and Rifle Range. I think that was like where they taught, like, for certain movies. Was it like Taxi Driver? Did they bring De Niro down there to train him? But that's where I learned, in the city. And it was interesting to hear those laws. Like, people who lived in the city that wanted to own their own things, like, were keeping things there in a storage locker, because they made it so difficult to to go back and forth with it, to bring things to the range. But then, yes, you go one county north and you can keep those things in your house more easily, but then they restrict certain types. Then you go two more counties, I can't speak, and then now you're even less restricted. So it is interesting that, yeah, to a certain extent it does change. But unfortunately, like, New York City is voting for the governor of New York, even though the rest of New York is completely different ideologically from New York City. But I guess, kind
I
of.
like that little wrap too, by the way. What's in that wrap? It looks like mangoes, peaches. What is it? 2 cans?
Oh, this?
Yes, ma'am.
Let me see. I guess, yeah, I think it's leaves and oranges.
Aha.
Somebody, said it was very
Very nice.
tropical.
It
So
is.
thank you.
You're
Yeah, it's
very
very
welcome.
hot up here, and there's no AC, so I'm like, I'm not gonna be
That's
able
why you gotta just do what I'm doing. Just get rid of that.
to leave it off.
This is a fashion choice.
So should I do that in memorial to Sinead O'Connor? Just
Aw. R.I.P.
Right, yeah, Troy is one of those greatest songs of the era. But so I guess to kind of hop it off into the next topic, into the strangeness areas, even though there's so much we could talk about with this, that's also why now we're coming into a time where the government is, quote unquote, we're in a disclosure era. We're in era of we're gonna let the public know what we have and what we're dealing with. And yes, we do have non-human entities that we found from crashed crafts that aren't, Earth technology. And we're your government, and we're gonna be so kind enough to we're gonna give you this information because we feel like you have the right to know.
Right.
So we have a government that we know is known for control. That's all they want to do. That's their only purpose. This is why these people stay in office for decades. So we're supposed to believe that they are doing this to be benevolent to us.
Only a week, by the way, only a week after Joe Biden reclosed, whatever you want to call it, the JFK files.
Oh, did he reclose? You see, I didn't know. But that's the thing, right? Whenever something happens like this, whenever there's a balloon in the sky, whenever something gets shot down, what else is going on at the same time? So yeah, I was curious to get your take on that. Like before like all this quote unquote, I call it disclosure because it's not real disclosure, but before this quote unquote disclosure happened, what were your views? And are they the same on like when it comes to, let's leave out paranormal for now, just UFOs and aliens and non-human biologics?
Non-human biologics from another planet, blah blah blah. I don't really care about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of I believe in a higher power, and I kind of trust that higher power, and I move forward, and I whatever. Does that mean that other people could look at my leaning towards God and be like, oh, religion is the opiate of the masses? Yeah, sure, that's fine. I used to be an atheist. I understand that whole logical, mind fuck. I didn't want to say it. I wanted to keep it, but it's gonna come out sometime.
I understand. Sometimes the words are just necessary to express.
They just are mind fuck. But I also want to point out, by the way, everybody, that this wasn't the government saying this. This was a whistleblower, right?
Yeah.
So the whistleblower, which could or could not be trusted, right? And that adds on to that, by the way, that I think, what if, I'm not super paranoid, but what if this whistleblower is coming forward with the alien thing so that whistleblowers get discredited? Similar to the whistleblowers, I don't know, the ones that this last week have talked about Hunter Biden, have talked about the IRS, have talked about the FBI, right? This is interesting that they're like, oh, by the way, this whistleblower, he talked about non-human remains. And that makes that makes us go like, I don't know about these whistleblowers. And all these whistleblowers who are coming forward with like real stuff are like, hey, but no, but right? What if that's an element of it?
Yeah. Discrediting. Mm-hmm. So you have to wonder, so many people that the government or the media wants to portray as completely insane. Now, lately, I'm kind of the mindset of, oh, maybe there's a reason they're being portrayed like that. Okay, yes, there are people who clearly have issues and need help. Let's say Britney Spears, for example. But there are other people, and the examples aren't hopping into my head at the moment, where everyone wants to act like they're completely insane and they have this completely crazy story, whether it's about aliens or whatever else. So you kind of, you have to look at like what's going on with the discrediting. I have pondered that, like, okay, where there's smoke, there's fire, something's going on. But it never occurred to me what you're saying, that, okay, they're talking other good things, but let's add in this element of crazy so that no one's going to pay attention to anything that they're saying.
Yeah. I mean, how long did this, did you watch the testimony or no?
Oh, no, I have no patience. I watch clips, but I have no patience for anything happening in a government setting like that.
See, I know, right? Why would you? Here's the other thing, though. Aren't you high strangeness, Ashley Ash? Like, I feel like of all people, you should be like all about this. Just if nothing else, just to discredit it.
Oh yeah, but I mean, the fact that it comes from them, I'm like, absolutely not. It's garbage. I mean, yes, I do believe that there are entities out there that our government is working with these entities, like, what is it, the Greada Treaty? Are you familiar with that treaty? Okay, now to everyone in the chat, correct me if I'm getting any of this wrong, but the gist is like during the Eisenhower administration, he made a deal with the Greys, the aliens, saying that, okay, we will let you come and abduct our people, and fine, we're not going to say anything about it. We're not going to try to stop you. Not that the US government could even stop that, but in exchange for doing that, you're going to give us some of your technology. So there was a little bit of I don't know, do this for me, we'll keep our mouth shut thing happening. So basically, our own government sold us out to the Greys, and that's where the whole abduction phenomenon really kind of took off. Because I guess you've always heard these reports throughout history, but all of a sudden, after World War II, things just like really exploded. And so yeah, so it's part of a deal. We're being experimented on, you know, whoever is an abductee, and that it's basically the fault of our own government. And it's interesting because if you do look at like reported sightings, yes, they show up all over world maps, but you tend to get a little more here. And you know, there's a few different explanations for that. But then when you think about it in terms of the Greada Treaty, then you're like, oh, well, maybe because our own government sold us out. And actually, Eisenhower's granddaughter came forward and said, yeah, this is true. This is legit. This did happen. Which also makes you wonder, because like, how would his own granddaughter know about the secret stuff unless he talked about it on his deathbed? But that's the gist of it. So yeah, Eisenhower made a deal with the aliens. That's how the story goes. And supposedly there is a video that I don't think it has been discredited. Somebody taping the landing that happened in that meeting from afar, and it's a really wild video. You know, you just see the saucer coming down somewhere in the desert, and there are witnesses that have come forward, and not like in the Bob Lazar way, because I don't believe the Bob Lazar stuff either.
Wait. How could you? Okay, all right, all right.
What are
This
you
is all
into
new to
Bob
me.
Lazar? Tell me.
No, not
No?
at all.
Okay.
No, I don't credit any of this. I'm very entertained. Continue.
Okay. All right. Sorry. And then we'll hop back to going back and
No,
forth.
no, 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 no. It's okay.
Manifesto of aliens.
Okay.
So you know, Bob Lazar is like the Area 51 guy who's like, oh, I
Right.
worked Area 51, and this is for you know anybody watching who might not know. You know, and again, maybe I'm not explaining it well because I refuse to look into too much Bob Lazar stuff, because I'm like, why would they let him get away with giving all this info out? Like, and some people are like, oh, because he's got something on them, and if he dies, then you know, then it's going to look bad. But I don't trust it. I feel like he's being put out there for a reason so that everyone thinks it's real, whatever the story may be. But I've heard some other testimonies actually through Blurry Creatures had a really interesting episode that was a members only episode, because the guy didn't want the story out too much. He was a little nervous, but it was a guy who claimed to work in the dumps, the deep underground military bases, and he said, yeah, our government is you know working with these entities down there. That's where they're staying, and they're not aliens. They're related to the demonic. They're Nephilim basically, and these creatures do talk about that, and there is human trafficking going on down there that feeds these entities. And it's interesting, the stories, once you start putting it into that lens, the Nephilim lens, that's where my perspective kind of comes from. Then it all kind of clicks and makes sense. But
Do you think
yeah,
there's Greys and Nephilim?
well, I guess that so when the angels fell, you know, the fallen angels, there's a belief that they bred with humans, and their offspring are called the Nephilim, and demons are actually the spirits of dead Nephilim.
I feel like that is some sort of, isn't that in the Bible somewhere?
Book of Enoch.
Okay. I remember somebody talking about giants recently and
Yeah,
thinking that there was that is that connected there?
yeah, giants would be also, yeah, Nephilim. So there's a belief that Nephilim are all these different types of entities and species, but that they are hybrids of humans and fallen angels. And
Okay.
that's also a very controversial view within Christianity, because you know it's a lot of Christians who are like, well, angels don't have like bodies to be able to breed with humans, and then other people are of the mindset. So I kind of tend to be of that hybrid mindset, because actually when you look at everything through that lens, things start making a lot more sense. That whole phenomena.
Okay, but does that include that? Okay, so Greys technically wouldn't be a separate
So they would
entity.
also be the hybrids too.
Okay,
Almost like there's
all right, all
different
right, all right.
species of hybrids. You know, there's grays, there's giants, there's this, there's that. I've heard Daniel Duval talk about it, saying like the reptilians are part of that, and that they're all like these factions of darkness, and some of them are working together, some of them are fighting each other. which is interesting too, because I mean, didn't Jesus talk about a house divided against itself cannot stand? So, but basically, but they're all dark. They're all factions of darkness. They're not on our side, even when they want to try to work with us and pretend to be on our side. So whatever, so I guess this even further feeds into my whole thing of like, oh, the government's evil. They're working with these people. But that's my mindset. So that's how I approach it. So when I see the government being like, oh, we're going to be generous and give you this info, I'm like, you're working with them. So I don't even want to hear what you have to say. So no, so I haven't watched those testimonies, but you're of the belief that absolutely not, this stuff doesn't exist. It's all BS. Is that?
In a way, but I also wouldn't put past anything of the U.S. government or any government for that matter.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I also kind of feel a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit disinterested. And I don't think it's just not disinterested in like, oh, can we move on? But a little bit disinterested in it, in that I kind of have fundamental, I mean, it's hard to bring it into everyday life. But I kind of have fundamental faith in the idea that it doesn't matter what goes on because it's already been written. Like,
oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, good wins, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So at the same time, it's easier for me to deal with that big stuff than it is to deal with the, people don't like my posts, But yeah, so it's interesting to me, but I also kind of feel like I also have spent a lot of my life in therapy and in therapeutic spiritual groups and in, just dunking my head deep into the human psychology because that's what's really interesting to me. And I also find you can write kind of anything off, not write anything off. I like how I'm saying off because I'm talking to you and I'm saying, off, coffee.
Really, because it sounds correct the way you're saying it.
From the Bronx. Ashley streams are the best. This is a great conversation. You're welcome, Russ.
I'm gonna go pop it up there. Thank you.
I'm fantastic, aren't I, Russ? But I kind of lean on that faith because it's just like, not the faith part, although I do, but I also lean on like a lot of times people want to, even amongst, the political landscape, they'll say things like evil, evil, evil. And I'm like, nah, greed. Greed is they're very similar. They're cousins, but I also kind of feel like greed can be delineated from evil because evil is dehumanizing. And these people are humans with names and addresses and faces. These people have through whatever nonsense they needed to do, some of them have sold their soul to an entity, blah blah blah. I kind of feel like, does that entity even exist? I don't know, but I do know that it kind of doesn't really matter because they had to do this thing. They had to sell their ass in order to be a part of this, they had to show that they were willing to continue to do horrible things. And so a group of people can easily supplant that for me. Right. I flippantly call them lizards because I think, they've sold their asses and I have no respect for them and we're going to win. But I also think I think there's a psychological element in those of us viewing what's going on and superhumaning them, even if they're evil, superhumaning them, because then it takes the onus off of us looking at our own evil.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I see what you mean. Yeah.
It's scary to look at mental illness. It's scary to look at human insanity. It's scary to look at my own evil. But I've spent a lot of time looking at my own evil and looking at other people's evil. I used to do volunteer work with a spiritual group inside of prisons, and it helped me so much more than it helped them. I didn't do it because I'm Mother Teresa, but I did it because I need to do it I need to grow spiritually to stay sober and stay alive. But through that experience, I've met and fellowshipped and broken bread with people who have done the worst things that humans can do. I've watched them change their life. I've watched them sometimes not change their life. Don't get me wrong, but I've watched them change their life and sometimes get out and sometimes not, and start to help people and be altruistic and give and blah blah blah. And so I'm like, if this person is so complicated that when they're 25 they can murder somebody, and when they're 40 or 35, they can be a completely changed individual and self-sacrificing and honest and humble and whatever. I'm like, I don't know. It points for me. It's one of the many elements that points for me towards how complicated and nuanced and contextual and beautiful and horrendous that our human species is.
Oh,
Does that make sense?
yeah, no, that completely makes sense. And it kind of, yeah, when people are using those terms, it's like passing the buck, I guess, right, would be the way to describe it. No, and I'm with you on that. People are making a conscious decision to behave, to serve these entities. Like, and I agree. Reptilians, lizards, it's a great, like, just
So much fun.
yeah, name to call people for name calling, whatever,
Right. The
But no, I
catch-all.
believe that those are the people in power. Everyone we're watching, those are minions. So it's like, no, you chose and you need to pay for those actions. I don't know, whatever it may be. Not advocating for violence, but I'm just, I don't know, get thrown out, get discredited. You need to lose everything in the bank, whatever it may be. These people need to pay for their actions, for betraying basically all human.
Absolutely. And maybe the payment doesn't come in this lifetime.
No, no. And I think
Unfortunately, a lot of great things happen to horrible people, and a lot of horrible things happen to great people,
yeah.
and the opposite happens as well.
And I think that's one of the things that's hard to cope with being alive on this earth, to like, that, yeah, the justice will be served eventually, but it's so hard sometimes when you don't see it happening anytime soon. And it feels like you're doing everything right, but why are these people reaping the benefits of it? Well, because this is just temporary. This is just a proving ground here on this earth. Yeah.
A friend of mine, we had a conversation. I mean, I don't mind sharing it on your show versus my show or whatever. It's not breaking news. I've been Christian-ish for a long time. I grew up Christian, and actually, I've talked to you about it. But I've been doing audio at a church for a couple months, and out of nowhere, a song will hit me, or and I'll start to tear up, and I'm like, "What is going on? This is nonsense." And then I had not that it's nonsense, the church or the whatever. I've been a spiritual man, and I believe in God for 21 plus years, but I'm looking at or like a guy, it's like 17-year-old, 16-year-old kid, turned his life over to Christ this past Sunday, and I was just like, why am I tearing up? No, like, why is this happening? Even though I haven't been this guy in a long time, and I'm thinking like, all right, God, all right, fine, I'll look into it. All right, I'll open up. You're calling me, fine, whatever. God just won't let up. So I had a conversation with a friend of mine who's a pastor, but like a legit pastor. She's like I know, and technically women aren't supposed to talk in church, apparently, to Corinthians. So let's just, whatever. But she's has done an incredible amount of spiritual work and therapeutic work for others, and and her own work. And she's honest. Whereas a lot of times in the pastor industry, in the church world, you have to like, oh, gee golly, the worst thing I did ever was I yelled at someone in traffic. Like, no, liar. She's honest. So I called her up and I'm like, all right, we've known each other for 21 years or so. And I just, wanted to, level with me. Let's talk about the logics. Let's talk about the whatever. And one of the things she said that seems to make sense for me is when I'm not understanding why something is happening in this world, in this realm, whatever you want to call it. She's like, I think to being a mom. She's a mom. And she's like, sometimes I had to tell my kid no. And sometimes they could understand why, but sometimes they could not. But it didn't really matter if they understood. They had to get out of the street, right? Or it didn't really matter if they understood. I don't have time because, my cousin is in need of help. I don't have time for them to take them into the store and buy them a video game, right? Whatever it is, you have to say no. What if God does that? If God is the grandparent and he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. You may not understand. And there's been countless things in my personal experience when I look back on that and I go like, God said no there. And I'm so grateful.
Yeah, it'll make sense down the road.
It makes sense. There's one, you know, it's a dumb example, but there was one where I remember like my first big breakup, and and we broke up, and I'm like, heartbroken and blah blah blah, but I'm like, and then we went back together like 3 times. Great sign, by the way. And then we broke up finally, and I'm like talking to my, to my people, and I'm like, my mentor, and I'm like, I don't know, whatever, blah blah blah. 6 months down the road, I'm like, thank God we broke up. Holy shit. I did not like her as a human being. I haven't liked her since before we even got together, right? But I just was blinded by the desire for intimacy, for the love, for the whatever, for the fill in the blank. I was 21 years old, but I was just like, and I go back and I'm like, why was I with that? Like it, I'm really grateful that that door closed. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And I had to close it multiple times and then open it again and then close it again. But I'm really grateful that we ended, but I didn't see it for the 6 months. So there's many different examples, but that's just one where I'm like, thank God. Or sometimes I'll see somebody online, who had rejected me. We all, as men, we all get rejected all the time, but who had rejected me, and then they're pregnant 6 months later, and I'm like, okay, they were on a different path. I was on a different path. Thank you, God. You know what I'm saying? Like over and over. It's
Yeah.
small instances, but
Yeah.
I hope you all understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, like you see, yeah, like you don't understand it at the time, but you see that God was working something. He was protecting you from something. He was guiding your life in another direction. And it's even like we were talking about justice earlier. You might not even see it in this life, but there is a reason. God's, people think that God is being restrictive or he's being too controlling of us or this or that, or that the rules as a Christian, but it's like, no, everything is there for a reason, and it's so hard for people to grasp until I guess maybe eventually you do, or people who aren't Christian, like people always want to say, oh, they're so restrictive and this and their
Mhm,
rules and that,
mhm,
but
mhm.
then things make sense. Or even like when you look at certain rules in Leviticus, in the Old Testament, and this was a time before they understood science, and you see like God laying out certain laws, and they didn't understand why God was telling them to do these things, but like now, thousands of years down the road, we're like, wow, we see the science behind it. We understand it. And they were being taught. And they never learned in their life why they were told these rules. So I just think it's amazing.
I
Everything is for a
wonder
reason.
I wonder if some of those laws were supposed to be temporary because they didn't know science, because they didn't understand, like whether it be, it's going to get a little, but whether it be circumcision or not to eat pork because trichinosis, or whatever it is, where it's just like, oh, that's why God did that, and then he would explain it later because now my desire to defend myself from that, and maybe it's my desire to defend myself from surrender. I'm a human being, but my mind says, well, why would God play that weird game then? Why not just say, hey, trichinosis, y'all, don't worry about it. You know what I mean? Like, I, but at the same time, maybe it's one of those things. I'll tell you this: I'm very grateful to have my life, and I'm very grateful to be in the time where we live. Yes, it's interesting times. Yes, it's tumultuous, but there are people alive right now who had to hide under a basement because the Germans were flying over their houses and bombing them.
Mhm.
So I don't have to deal with that.
Yeah.
Women have stopped dying in childbirth at incredible astronomic numbers. I'm grateful for that. Right. I get to order Thai food without putting on socks. Like, I'm grateful for that. So like we can get all black pilled, but things are actually pretty good.
No, definitely. And every generation thinks it's the end.
Mhm.
And people say, well, there's more signs that point to it now, but it's kind of like whatever. It is what it is. We're here for the ride. And I feel like we just have to appreciate the times we live in and not be like,
Mhm.
why wasn't I born in this era? Why is it so dark now? What can we do besides just lament or this or that? And it's like, no, there's always good. There's always good to be found. And I don't understand why people can't just stop and think about it, or just like appreciate the little things,
Mhm.
something just even in the midst of darkness. I mean, is it does it also kind of come back to our mental health issue? Are people so self-focused now that everything feels 10 times worse, 1,000 times worse, because they can't get out of that rut? They can't look outside themselves. They can't help somebody else out. So it's also like, okay, are the times really worse, or are people just making it worse for themselves because they're so self-absorbed? I don't know.
Self-absorbed and focused on the wrong things. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I think, when I go to the gym and I do pull-ups or I do, push-ups, my chest gets bigger, right?
Mhm.
Whatever you practice, you get better at, right? Whatever you practice, you get better at. Well, what if I'm constantly practicing complaining? What if I'm constantly practicing looking at the bad? What if I wonder if that's a muscle too, ladies and gentlemen, where we look at this and we go, I look online and I'll see all these, memes about how like, we say it flippantly. I'm not opposed to any humor ever, knowing me, but I look online and I'm like, people, it's easy to say, oh, I hate everybody, but I love animals. I hate everybody. Things are always crappy. Look at the fire around the dog meme, where he's like, this is fine. Like it's culturally popular to be a kafetch, a
Yeah.
kafetching nonsense, nincompoop. It's culturally popular to be antisocial, to be Wednesday Addams, apparently. It's culturally popular to be a douchebag. And so that's
I mean, but do you think part of this comes from social media culture and just like the whole
absolutely.
narcissistic? Yeah, we have to, but it's also it's weird because it's presented as art too, right?
It's
It's art
presented
to
as
be
art.
all moody and this and that, and to dwell on these things. But
It's presented as art and it's presented as popular. This is
yeah,
what everyone's feeling. Why don't you? Oh, you're overly positive, or you're this, or you're that,
mhm,
right? It's presented as art, and it's also presented as this is the way we're supposed to feel in the postmodern era or whatever,
mhm.
right? And I'm so grateful and so proud of us for sidestepping that. A lot of us have started to look at traditional ways and say, like, okay, why did they, like you're talking about understanding why, certain laws in Leviticus, why did they make these traditions where women stayed home and men went and worked and sacrificed in war and blah blah blah? Maybe it's because we are born this certain way and we have scientific backup for it, or health backup for it, or God backup, whatever you want to call it. Over and over and over again, I've heard, and I've had every mom I have on my show, especially if they're a mom of boys, I ask them, like, Christina Pazitsky said it perfectly. She's like, feminism goes out the window as soon as you have boys, because you're like, oh, this isn't society. Like they came out of the womb with finger guns. You know what I mean? Like they come out of the womb running around and knocking and playing with trucks and just, painting and jumping off it, and they're beating up and blah, blah, blah. They're insane. Boys are insane in our own special way, and women are insane in their own special way. So what if we cultivated that and moved that forward? Anyway, suffice it to say, I'm saying, yes, the popular Aubrey Plaza, boo, no one cares.
Oh yeah,
That
yeah, the hurt, yeah, something
Yeah,
rubs me the wrong way.
yeah, that vibe of like, I'm like Daria, but 20 years later and less original. Um, that whole vibe, those women are going to continue to get and stay that way because we don't want to spend time with them. Why would you want to spend time with someone who's negative? Like
Yeah,
why? Why? Like I'm a human being. I like to get negative. Don't get me wrong, but I like to get negative sometimes, and I like to eventually bounce back and whatever.
yeah. I
I
mean,
don't
there's
know.
nothing
I'm going
wrong
off
with
on a tangent, but
marinating in it, exploring it, but you need to come out of that. I mean, it's just like to bring in my own family's situation into this. We work together to be a caregiver for a family member, and it can be a depressing situation. I mean, it's said that the caregiver suicide rates are really high because it's depressing to see people decline and to be in that situation, and you lose a lot of your freedom, and and bad things happen. But I could we could all just like sit and dwell in that and just think about how sad it is and how terrible, and this is our lives now, and oh my gosh, let me trauma dump this on everybody. But you know what? Or we can be, like what does it say in the Bible? Everything you do, do it as if you're doing it for the Lord. We can go in happy and we can make the most of it, and we could laugh at the ridiculous things. My family, we laugh at everything. Something something goes wrong and we laugh, not that somebody's injured or something,
Yeah.
but you're finding the good in the darkness. And I believe that, even let's say we are spiraling into the end of the world. I don't know. I'm not of that mindset that the world's ending anytime soon. If
Right.
it
Right.
does, cool. If not, I'm
Yeah.
sure I'm going to make the best of it. But that's the thing.
Yeah.
If we are spiraling into darkness, people need to stop and find the good, find the time to laugh, find the time to be happy. That's why I feel like you can always make your own little world.
Hmm.
And like, like those people who are like homesteading, if things are bad, you have your whole family circle, your community circle. You're going to make the best of it. You're going to have your own world. Like, I love people who make their home their retreat from the world.
Think
So
about it.
that's not popular. I should be, as a caregiver, I should be going and making an Instagram account about how sad it is, and look at this and look at my
Right.
life, and send donations and buy stickers of this person, and
Right.
hashtag awareness or whatever.
And think about it in this context, because I've wanted to kill myself before, right?
Mhm.
Um, and there were people who killed themselves during the first 6 months of the pandemic,
Mm.
and look where we are now. We did get through it.
Yeah.
Some of us in Texas, as an example, like a year and a half earlier than New York, but so we did get through it, and
Yeah.
we are more awake and aware than we ever have been. And a lot of people are like, hey, I don't think the government's trustworthy. Like, a lot of people are waking up, and a lot of people are turning to God, and a lot of people are turning to traditional, and a lot of we are getting there.
Yeah.
But if I had pulled the ripcord, I wouldn't get to see it.
Hmm.
And I don't personally believe that God would be a dick about that, just because, but I think I would have missed out. I would
Hmm.
have missed out on the fact that, and hurt my family, right?
Hmm.
So, that points me to something that, I've talked about or whatever, but I also will just put in a quick shout out for. Um, I've seen a lot of Republicans lose their mind. I've seen a lot of Democrats lose their mind, a higher percentage, but I've seen a lot of, um, you know, um, socialists be absolute nut jobs emotionally, and fraught with mental illness and insanity. And I've also watched a lot of libertarian anti-state guys who are like so antisocial, you don't want to be around them because they suck the energy around it. Hey man, the
Yeah.
lizards and blah 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 blah. And I'm just, bro, we're at a taqueria. Can we eat? Like, what do you? So regardless of what the symptom looks on the top,
Mm.
the disease is the same. The
Mm.
disease is
Mhm.
fear. The disease is disconnection from my higher power, and the disease is disconnection from my fellow man.
Yeah.
If we fix that, then it doesn't matter if there's a D next to your name or an R next to your vote. It doesn't matter if we're taking care of ourselves. Maybe that's the next God evolution. Maybe that's the next move, is to like, oh, I'm going to meditate every day. I'll start off with I started off with 5 minutes, 3 minutes, because I could not shut my mind off. Not that that's the goal, but I started meditating, and I'll pray a little bit. Maybe I'll write, I'm feeling really down in the dumps. Do I need to feel this right now and heal some trauma? Or do I need to write down a gratitude list and see like, oh, shit's really actually pretty great. Okay. Do I need to reach out to a friend who's struggling, even though I'm all up in my head, and just see how he is, and therefore get less self-absorbed, like you were talking about earlier? So that if we turn inward and we take care of ourselves, and that's turning to God, boom. Like, it gets lighter, kids,
Yeah.
and I don't have to lose out on don't quit. There's this old saying in the spiritual group I'm part of: don't quit 5 minutes before the miracle happens.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, I like that. It's a
Yeah.
good one. Yeah. No, I mean, and it comes back to that whole like alien thing. You're like, you could dwell on these things, and are there reptilians, and are there this, or can you just go, you know what? It is what it is. God's on the throne. We know who wins in the end.
Right.
Because yeah, people do really get pretty black pilled, and like take that I'm sure you've heard the story about that guy who was so upset about the climate from chatting with like an AI bot, that, the AI bot convinced himself, you just need to kill yourself. It's the best thing for the climate. The guy did it. So
I haven't heard that one.
Oh yeah, I think it went around. I mean, who knows if it's real or not? But I mean, I think it made the news, so I'm pretty sure it was a thing. But I guess it comes to that whole thing of people letting it affect them and get too blackpilled and everything. And I think it is hard if you don't have that. And I know not everybody has it. People say they can get through life without it. You know, to each their own, but I think it's very hard to navigate this life without a faith because like you were saying, we know who wins in the end. We know that whatever sucky situation happens, it's going to be all right. So I mean that, and I believe that that's the reason I can dive into weird things. Like, okay, I find all this fascinating, but I don't worry about it. I'm
You're
just
an example of that. When I look, when you're into like aliens or this or that, I'm like, wait, but she's not nuts. I don't want to run right now. Like, what is going on? It's because you have trust, you know.
Yeah, because I know that there is an answer we may not be able to grasp, in this life on this earth, wrap our head around it, but it's interesting to learn. We as humans are naturally curious. It's okay to kind of explore things with that curiosity. Just don't get sucked into it. Don't get so black belt by it. And again, there's when you say turn inward, like turn to your faith, turn to meditation, do what you need to. But also, I guess don't turn too inward where to your thoughts too, where the people just want to, because sometimes I think
Oh, no,
thinking
no, no,
too
no.
much
Yeah.
is just toxic. It's too much. Like
Right.
here, I'm just like, oh my gosh, these past few years are just horrendous for everyone. I'm like, I need to do something different. And we had spoken about this. I took a carpentry class. I'm like, okay, cool. I'd always wanted to learn this. Let me learn it. And it was a fun thing to go and just learn something new. So sometimes people just need to, if you are stuck in this rut, anybody who might be listening, and you, again, we highly suggest faith. It's an excellent thing. It's not the opiate of the masses, but also go volunteer somewhere. Think about someone else, for a change. And I don't mean that in a mean way, but really focusing on somebody else is it's like balm to your soul, to your spirit, to your heart. Take a class, sit outside in nature. You know what? People, they say adults have trouble making friends. I'm like, how is this possible? Just walk up to people and talk to them. People genuinely, for the most part, are happy.
I'll add that you are a girl.
I was just about to say, I realized
Okay.
as I'm saying it, I'm like, wait, I'm not too threatening because I'm female. It's harder for men. Okay, I get you. Because even if you're like in the gym, then people are like, oh my gosh, he's hitting on me. They won't leave me alone.
Right. But there's also, so I'll clarify, to turning inward. Yeah, you're right. Doesn't mean let me just think.
Mhm.
You cannot use a thinking. So you can't find, I personally, and it doesn't stop me sometimes from doing this, but I do it less and less, whatever. But if I'm having a thinking problem, I can't think my way out of my thinking problem. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? I have to turn it outward, but outward doesn't, yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Spiritually inward.
yeah.
Um,
Have to be
but
careful with
all,
your thoughts. Yeah.
yeah. But also, it's supposed to be difficult. Like if you're trying something new, every time I've, been lazy for months and then go to the gym, I'm like, ow, the next day, like it's not fun. I thought I was going to be buff 5 minutes ago and lose 20 pounds in 20 minutes. Like that's not how this works. It is a process and you get a little bit better. And I'll speak to the men specifically. You are enough. Nobody tells you that. I understand that. Or as far as the culture goes, your mom may, your friends may, and in other ways. But I'm telling you right fucking now, you are enough. Value yourself. Okay. And here's how we do that. We turn inward, we go meditate, we go, work out, we go whatever. We eat right, we take care of ourselves, we take the time to be, and we read about God, and we read about stoicism, and we read about what manhood looks like and what it looked like back then. There's a great book by about Napoleon. I'll find it right now. It's called Napoleon by Andrew Roberts. There's another one called Magna Carta by Dan Jones. There's another one called The Indispensables by Patrick K. O'Donnell, which is about the gentleman who helped row Washington across the Delaware, right? It's like real manhood shit, right? Like it's real, like, revolutionary, whatever.
Yeah.
These were all bands of fishermen, pirateers or privateers, which is kind of like being a pirate. These were all like, these were not losers, or not losers, but they were 21-year-olds. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't know what they were doing, but we have a country because of it, and it's the greatest country that ever existed. So what can you create? And you turn in when you look at that manhood and you go like, you know what? I'm going to value myself. I'm going to value myself. Even if you have to do goofy stuff like I do, hippie, dirty stuff like affirmations. Ugh. Looking in the mirror and saying that I value myself. Gross. But I did it anyway. And goddamn, I guess it kind of works. I start taking care of myself in little ways. And I'm telling you, men, the way to fix the world, it's easy to say more masculinity. Yeah, but your definition of masculinity might be dog shit. I believe that, but if you take care of yourself, it doesn't really matter what the outside looks like, because you're sovereign, because you value yourself, and all of a sudden, more life and more people do get attracted to me and to us. You know, and also just, fucking just join a club. You know what I mean? Like, she's talking about doing the carpentry thing. I wouldn't necessarily go up to girls inside of parking lots and saying like, would you like to be my friend? But I'm saying like, go join a club where there's other boys, and we'll, let's get my boys together. Like, there's so much value. But I'm really hitting that on the head there again, because we never tell boys that they're enough. We never tell men that they're enough. Not in today's climate, not in the last fucking 30 years. So I'm telling you, men, you are. Fuck her, fuck them. You're enough. Believe in yourself.
I like that. Yeah. No, I mean, because like just viewing what's out there now in terms of like the red pill bros and masculinity and everything and what they're trying to promote as masculinity, it's like, okay, there's something seriously wrong there. And as a woman, you look at that and it's like such a deterrent. Not that I think men need to be soft and everything, but I'm like, this whole Andrew Tristan Tate way to go. I'm sorry, I don't know if you're a fan of them, but they do, yeah, they say some really horrendous stuff and try to pass it off as manhood. But I'm like, that's not being a man, you know. What you're saying is being a man. All those things, like invest in yourself, educate yourself, put yourself out there. You are enough, because we live in a culture that truly does hate men at every turn. I mean, and it starts in the schools. Schools really are feminized completely. I mean, besides the fact that you have majority of teachers for younger children are women, but even just the ways of teaching serve girls who can sit there and pay attention and sit quietly. There's nothing that kind of suits boys and what they're into. And even when I was in high school, I remember that a lot of the really practical stuff was taken out, and like my art class was in like the former auto shop place, so they took all those masculine arts out, and they're like, no, you have to go to BOCES for that. You got to go to trade school if you want to learn it. But then if you wanted to go to trade school, they would discourage you. They're like, no, those are for non-college track people. So they took all the masculine arts out of there, and then they replaced it with more feminized arts. You know what kind of art I was learning in the former auto shop classroom? I was learning jewelry making. So you see, there's just a constant attack on that. And then you have these boys come out not knowing how to do anything and how to make things with their hands. And there's nothing wrong with men learning art. I think boys should learn that too. But I'm like, can't you give speak to how boys learn, more options to learn things hands-on, and to have that community with each other? And that's why I think the Boy Scouts or that type of thing is great. The Boy Scouts are an iffy organization, but in general,
I think we should have a man scouts where
yeah.
we learn how to tell women no. It really works out. Just be a container for the beautiful energy that is femininity. Be a container, but also be a boundary. Like, be willing to set boundaries and learn how to do that, boys. That's an element of taking care of yourself. There isn't everything that I barely listen to those boys, because I saw someone talk about red pill is so dumb. A lot of people have a lot of different definitions of red pill. For me, culturally, spiritually, whatever, I support the men standing in whatever way. Sometimes they might not be able to hear me when I hear it in the language that I put it. Right. And plus, they're a lot more famous than I am. The language that I put is about self-love. That sounds like girl stuff. That sounds like femininity. It isn't. It's the opposite. but it sounds like it. And so guys might not be able to hear it from me, but they will hear it. They might hear it from somebody like an Andrew Tate or whatever, who are saying, "Oh, work out." Like, hey, that's a net positive. Like
Oh, sure.
leaving the basement is a net
Oh,
positive. Getting money, supporting yourself, net positive.
yeah,
So I kind of see it as like the bumpers in bowling. You
yeah.
get a little too far, you bowl and you get a little too far and you hit the wall and you get a little too far that way and you hit the wall and back and forth and back. We're still getting down to the end. And, just like the whole feminist movement, maybe the good intentions, maybe that started it, which was like, hey, pay us the same amount for the same amount of work. And I'm down with that. But now it's bastardized and it's perverted by people who are malevolent and don't do their fucking trauma work. And that's what we have here. So, but we'll get there. But I still kind of like that Sigma vibe of like, at the very least, it's funny and that's good. There's an underground place where men and women too can be free humor wise. And that's, again, net positive,
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. And like I'm not knocking like those other aspects that, like you were saying, that Tate brothers do say, because I guess what is it saying? A broken clock is right twice a day. But yeah, of course, everyone needs to take care of themselves. And yeah, unfortunately, I mean, not unfortunately, fortunately, as humans, we have to make ourselves look presentable if you want to meet other people. Yeah, there's certain aspects that are right, but I mean, there are certain really nasty things that come out of those guys,
Sure.
which I think is presenting a really terrible version of manhood, especially Tristan. But for the most part, yeah, I just avoid them and don't listen to them. But oh, where I was going somewhere with this and I just completely lost it. Do you like the way my brain works? It just like things
I
just
love
fly
it.
in and out.
And it sounds so New Yorker. I like it and you bangle around with the earrings. It's perfect.
My
I feel like I'm in a pizza place in 1991. I
earrings.
want to say Lower East Side before it got all Disneyfied. That's where I
Mhm.
feel like I'm at right now.
I used to work in a pizzeria.
I I believe that. I believe that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it was a good experience, but yeah, but I'm sorry, I lost where I was going with that,
it's okay.
but yeah, but no, I do like, I love what you preach and put out there. And just to jump back to your show a moment,
Sure.
because yeah, you have these excellent ideas that you are putting out there into the world. So Conservatish is mostly a guest-based show, but do you ever just like speak like this to your audience without a
Mhm.
guest and have a topic? Okay.
Yeah, I haven't done one in I want to say 7 months. The
Okay,
last one I did, I was defending Kanye.
gotcha. Yeah.
Mhm. If I
him
have some
or his
stuff to say.
clone
Huh?
him or his clone.
Hey.
Mhm.
Ooh.
A weird Kanye now who doesn't look like Kanye, who looks like a stunt double. And who's taller.
I hear you. I know. I
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
Um, do you, but yeah, sometimes I'll do solo shows. I was just actually thinking of doing one about essentially this topic about how to will I give it away? Yeah, no, whatever. I was just gonna say, like, the way I want to do it is to call the episode "How to Fix Women,"
Mhm.
and then have the whole episode be like, "Well, here's how you fix women, men." Now
Yeah.
let's talk about you, men, and because that's really what it is. Oops, oops. It goes back to.
You
I'm not
balance each
saying
other.
we
It's a
balance.
balance, and to fix one side of the balance, the other side needs to be fixed. How do you fix men? Well, then women need to work on these certain things too.
Yeah, but women are at least trying. It's bastardized, it's perverted, it's overboard. But women are at least trying to be aware of what they want and what they need. Um, it's gone crazy, whatever. But men don't really have a place for that, and they don't have a place to complain about y'all. We don't.
Mhm.
Even though we date you and we know like how horrendous y'all can be, and and we right. And we also have, I mean, every single time, like people talk about, like, oh, patriarchy. Almost everybody I know has mommy issues, way more frequently than daddy issues. A lot of people I know personally, anyway, I could be wrong, but a lot of people that I know personally in the grand, not the grand scheme, but I know personally, have an abusive mother, or have an overbearing mother, or overprotective mother, or this or that, or whatever. And we never talk about that.
Mhm.
We never talk about that, especially now with the huge amount of single moms, because dads get kicked out or they run away or they whatever, like a little pansy away from the house, and they do whatever. And like you're saying, most men are, or most teachers are female over and over. Something is, and most men, I think it was 75% of suicides are men. Like there's some, let's diagnose the problem accurately, ladies and gentlemen, right? So how to fix men is stop listening to women about how you should be. Talk to men, talk to real men. Like, and you know what a real man is, you feel it in your gut. And that's not some guy who's some grand poobah. I hate grand poobahs. I hate them. I've had experiences with cults of my very own. Not my own cult. That would be fun. But no, my being in one. But maybe I'll tell that story later. But I'm saying, like, I'm not talking about the Tates or the Andrew. But fuck that. No, sovereignty and pointing inward, right? And how to be a man, and looking at the history books I talked about earlier, looking at what works in traditions and pulling that forward. We don't have a place for that. And so to help, that's why I say telling women no, or setting a boundary, because women have learned, or at least a lot of them these days, oh, I can overstep here and be a hero. I can go into a comedy club. Here's an example. I can go into a comedy club and interrupt the entire, not just the comedian's night, everyone who paid money to come into this comedy club. I can stop everyone else's good time because I didn't like that one joke that person said. It is 95% of the time. I've listened to countless comedians say this. 95% of the time, white woman. Why is that? Is that the only place that they do that? Or is that a symptom of a greater disease?
Well, I mean, that's why the Karen thing is a joke, because it's real. It's a thing, like that stuff doesn't come out of nowhere.
No. So when I'm talking to men and I want to talk about this and make this episode or whatever, is like, we need to point more to ourselves and be willing to take the L. Like, they need to be willing to take the L, and take the L means take the loss of saying, no, I don't like it when you do this, or I don't, whatever, to women that either they date or a comedy club or whatever. And to be, I've heard it put this way: women are the water in the river, and men are the river banks. Right? Where, like, we're going a direction, but if we're just a giant, flood of puddle of whatever, like, we're not, neither one of us are happy. Right?
Well, doesn't that also come back to the biblical principles of the man as the leader?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and that's not to diminish women, because, like you said, women are the water in that river.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
And they're incredibly way more powerful than I can be at especially, like, the really important stuff. If you want to talk about that, like, the really, I don't know why feminists got in their head that birthing a human being and then raising it and, like, putting it to their chest is somehow less important than your TPS reports. What? That's the most important thing. Sorry. I'm just saying. No. But, like, but we, the culture, feminists, the lizards, whatever, made it uncool. And so that points women, and now women are unhappy and they wonder why.
Oh yeah, 100%. And the thing is, and because we've gone in that direction, now younger women, like in their early 20s, don't have the examples to look at. So, it then becomes this thing that just starts spiraling out of control, because once upon a time you had these examples, and you're like, okay, see, being a mother is not this horrendous thing that everyone makes it out to be, because look at these people. But now if they don't even have these people to look up to, and like you said, and if they have mommy issues, and I was thinking when you said that, because I'm like, gosh, when I see people talk on Twitter about their parents, it's always about, whatever mommy issue they have. So you see that there is that there is this decline that's just going to keep getting worse because of losing that feminine example too, because they're really because women do need those examples too. They need to see women doing those things. I mean, and I get that everybody plays a different role. Not everybody is made to be a mother, but we don't need to demonize that either. We need to, because it was interesting, because I remember, spoiler alert for Hunger Games, but people were upset. Am I about to spoil it for you? Hunger Games? Okay.
I'm a straight man. I don't watch Hunger Games. Continue.
Well, I remember, people were upset at the end that the the heroine of this book series chose motherhood at the end.
Hmm.
And they're like, oh no, almost like she should have been a feminist hero. But I'm like, isn't that feminist having the choice where she could just continue in one direction, or she could be a mother, but she made a choice, right? So I'm like, that's
Right.
feminism, but what happened? We're not allowed to make choices anymore. We need to go back to the Camille Paglia kind of feminism.
Ta-da! The
Love her.
greatest. I swear to. Did we talk about Camille already?
I don't think we have.
I have emailed with her publicist once. She
Yeah.
said she's open to it, but she wasn't promoting anything at that time. If I get to talk to Camille, I will not mention you. No, I'm just kidding. But so let's think about two of the main, and then I should go soon. I gotta.
I'm sorry, I'm keeping you because we always have such a good time chatting.
Yes, we do. Two of the greatest heroines of all time. What are they? Kill Bill, right? What her whole emphasis on life was about defending or retribution and or protecting her fucking kid, bro. Her kid, bro. Here's another one. Ripley from Alien.
You're like naming my favorite characters.
Yeah. Think about her in 2. Mama, just, the baby in one hand or whatever, a link or whatever in one hand and the flamethrower in the other. Badass, right? Yeah. We talk and we look at those women. They are the most authentic. Mm-hmm. It's when a female heroine, whatever, that we're being force fed, who acts like a dude, that we are just like, I'm not interested. And it's not because it's not because I hate women. It's because I hate disingenuousness. Mm-hmm. It's because I smell lecture, and I sit back and I go, I thought we were supposed to go to movies for entertainment. I thought that's what this was. Yeah. No. Right.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's interesting. Now you got me thinking, because I'm like, those are some of my favorite movies. Kill Bill. I love the character of the bride. I love the character of Ripley. I mean, those are my movie obsessions, when it comes to. So interesting. Yeah. And that's why I guess women connect to those roles. So even though they are this tough action heroine, at its core, it is the feminine.
Right. And back in, I'm going to say both, I don't know necessarily about the 80s, but like, or late 80s, 90, 91. When did Aliens come out? I think 89, something like that. 86.
Oh, Aliens, 86.
Yeah. So men didn't go like, boo, I don't want to watch this movie. We loved Kill Bill. We loved Aliens. And part of it was, the action, whatever. But it was like a legit ass badass. Like, we saw the feminine come out and we were like, I like that. Hot, right?
How did I get into Aliens? My dad.
Ta-da. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm yeah, because men love those movies. And people think that men don't want to see these female-led movies fail because men don't want to see it. No. They want, like you said, authenticity. Authenticity is so important. It's like, it's weird.
Another example is Frankenstein. Frankenstein has been famous for 220 years. That's written by a woman, Mary Shelley. Mm-hmm. We didn't go at that and like, wait, it's written by a girl? Ew, gross. I can't even understand. No, we love it. It's been not just super famous, but super loved for 200 fucking years. And yet the chick, the dum-dum who wrote, who directed Charlie's Angels, like the new remake that they did a few years ago, we didn't have anything for her, neither men or women. And it's because it's dishonest. I smell lecture. I smell nonsense. And I'm like, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah. Right. No, and I'm actually, if you have another minute, I'm just going to hop to another movie, but I just wanted to thank Brian. Thank you so much, Brian. Brian said, what a great conversation. We need more like this. Thanks, Ash and Peter. Subbed your channel. So yeah, guys, definitely make sure to go and follow everything Peter related. I will put it in the description after this ends so that everything is in there and you can find him. But in the meantime, before I put it in the description, would you like to tell everybody where to find you?
Sure. So my weekly show is called Conservatish. It's available on YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify, and Rumble. Actually, screw YouTube because they've shadow banned me so hard. I've got like 15.9. I'm very shadow banned and censored. So find me on Rumble or YouTube, whatever. And you can find me on Instagram at Peter_Feliciano and on Twitter at Rule62Peter. And there you go. Thank you very much, you guys.
Thank you. And by the way, speaking of woke, I hear Barbie that it wasn't hyped up. My sister went and she saw me today. She goes, I was going to walk out. My husband kept me from walking out, but I was going to leave because it was just such garbage. Because yeah, it's not, it wasn't, I think it was presented authentically. But, oh, and Clintron's just sub too. Awesome chats. So yeah, thank you guys for subbing Peter. So yeah, if you liked him here, that this is what his channel is like. And you know what? Speaking of the topics we just spoke about, we gotta hook you up with Denise McAllister. You would love her. One of my favorite cultural commentators, probably my favorite cultural commentator for anyone.
How dare you? I'm sitting right here.
Favorite female cultural. I didn't know you were female. Oh, so okay. Oh, sorry. How do you identify? I'm sorry. Am I going to get myself in trouble now? But she wrote a book called "What Men Want to Say to Women But Can't." So she started dissecting that whole phenomenon. But thank you so much, Peter, for staying almost an hour and a half. I'm sorry I kept you this long.
No, my pleasure. I love our conversations.
Yeah, we have some good conversations, and thank you to everybody who has hung out in the chat. Do you have a minute just so I can catch up with you in the green room before you go?
Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to pull this back up. John Davis, Pastor John Davis always has the most awesome book recommendations. So speaking on this topic, he's recommending Stu Weber's book, Tender Warrior, God's Intention for a Man, The 4 Pillars of Authentic Masculinity, King, Warrior, Mentor, Friend, all pictures of Jesus Christ. Oh my gosh, this sounds fantastic. Thank you.
I'm looking it up right now.
For that recommendation. So everyone write it down, screenshot it. I always, my theory is if John's recommending it, then it's worth it. Nice. So well, you guys have a wonderful night. Thank you all for hanging out tonight. If you're watching the replay, thank you for coming to the replay. Please like and sub to this channel, to Peter's channel, and hopefully I will see you all next week. Have a good weekend and sleep tight. Don't let the aliens bite, right? Because the government says apparently they're in government custody. So have a good night, guys. Thanks again. Bye.